So we're missing Councilmember Mitchell and Councilmember Brady. Hey, Mayor. Let's just wait a few more seconds and before we get started.
All right, thank you. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Tried to stay dry. Wow.
That was an optimum word. While we're waiting, who's going to take the first agenda item on number 3? Melissa, are you doing that?
Let me look at that. Sorry.
Or
I don't
Stephen
think
is-
that's mine, but
What, I'm sorry, what is it, Councilman
a
Shea?
sound truck,
Julia,
Julia.
I think that's yours.
the definition on trucks, noise.
Thank you. I don't have the agenda up in front of me yet, so I just want to make sure. That's mine.
That's yours, Miss Julia.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's wait a few more seconds and let's see if we pick up 2 more council members. Have we heard from them, from anybody from the clerk's office, whether or not they're joining us?
I have not heard anything so far, but I can double check with Jennifer. Here's Councilmember Mitchell now.
Okay. Councilman Mitchell, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to call on you to lead us in either a moment of silence or a brief invocation, if you don't mind, please, sir.
I hear you.
I'm going to call the order the Public Safety Committee meeting, February 13th, 2023. It's a few minutes after 2 o'clock. And welcome everybody who is joining us. Thank you for your participation. And Councilmember Mitchell, would you do the honors of leading us either in a moment of silence or in a brief invocation?
Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, let us all be mindful of what we're here to do today. And let us be on one accord. And also let us be mindful of what you have entrusted us to do. All this action in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for that. All right, our wonderful legal advisor, Ms. Julia Copeland, you will lead us in the discussion regarding the ordinance to amend Chapter 21, Noise Division, Sound Trucks, to include the definition of-
Mr. Chairman, if I may, a motion to approve our minutes from
Oh,
December
yeah,
12th.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sitting to get it, they're right in front of me, looking right at them. They're like, all right, I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th, 2022.
Second.
All right, any opposed, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Ayes have it. All right, Ms. Copeland.
Now it's my turn. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Council Chair.
So this ordinance, the mayor asked that we modify and amend this ordinance to actually bring it up to date. I mean, it hasn't been modified since 75, when I believe political candidates used to ride around in cars with big old speakers on the top of the cars announcing their run for office. So this is actually, we've amended this to alter the definition of sound truck itself to not only include motor vehicles and horse-drawn vehicles, but any mode of transportation, and also allowing for the fact that it doesn't have to be attached to the vehicle. It can be sitting on the roadside next to it and plugged into the vehicle itself. So this will allow us to capture anything that's got a speaker attached to it or someone who's driving around with a bullhorn.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 3.
Let me
Move for
ask a
approval.
question.
Yeah, let's get a motion first and we can open it up for questioning.
All right.
Is there a
Move for
motion?
approval.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second. I'll second.
All right, Councilmember Mitchell.
Okay, this is only for campaigning?
No, sir, it's any noise emitting from what's called a sound truck here. So it would require a permit, I do believe, in order to use
Any amplified sound.
for any amplified sound. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I think this will make our friends at the federal courthouse happy. There seems to be a particular individual who likes to cruise Broad Street from time to time with amplified noise emitting from that person's vehicle. When my office was on Broad Street, it was very clear. I could hear him almost a mile away, seemed like, whatever he was broadcasting. So how does this, and I hate to bring this up, Julia, and you're going to give me a smirky smile, I know. With our other issues dealing with noise in general, I know we had a brief discussion about it, and it kind of went by the wayside. But amplified noise, I'm still getting complaints from my constituents from water travel noise, music, amplified music. I'd like to renew that discussion at some point. It has not gotten any worse, but it hasn't gotten any better either. So that's maybe another day for another discussion, but I do just want to bring that back up for talk at some point later on. If you don't mind.
Absolutely. That's something we would need to have some discussions with the owners of that particular venue. But yes, we can certainly renew those conversations.
One more question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Even with the young people that's driving around with these motorcycles, the loud music and loud noise, is that part of it also?
It looks like here under sound amplifying equipment, it shall not be construed to include standard automobile radios when used and heard only by occupants of the vehicle. So there's a potential that a motorcycle with a very loud radio would probably be
Right.
trapped under the noise ordinance. Yes.
Okay. But I have a lot of that going on.
We're gonna have a problem with law enforcement interpreting what's loud.
That's always been an issue with our noise ordinance in general.
Yes, it has.
It's discretionary, but yes. This will not change that issue that our officers are currently dealing with.
Okay. It seems to give them some discretion on that.
Yeah, this would just require that they get a permit in order to use their device for this specific purpose for amplified noise.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ayes have it for this pass. Thank you for that quick update. Our next item is an update and presentation regarding the racial bias audit. I've invited Mr. Jerome Harris, who you see on your screen, to listen into this, and I may ask him for his input as well at some point. Hello, Mr. Harris. How you doing, sir? Good. All right, I think Deputy Chief Walker is going to give us the initial update on this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'll kick it off and then pass it off. Chairman, appreciate it. Good afternoon, Mr.
Good
Mayor,
afternoon.
council members. In January of 2019, the city of Charleston selected the CNA Institute for Public Research to conduct an assessment audit of CPD. The audit offered 72 recommendations based on 48 findings that were classified into 5 different sections for assessment. However, one of the recommendations was withdrawn as it was clarified before the report was published. The 5 areas that were assessed are traffic stops to include field contact cards, use of force, deadly and non-deadly, the complaint process, internal and external, community-oriented policing practices, recruiting, hiring, promotions, and personnel practices. It was agreed upon that CPD would provide periodic updates on our progress, and the Public Safety Committee would be the platform for those updates. During the last update last year, we had 9 outstanding recommendations that were still a work in progress. We also had a vacancy in the procedural justice director's positions. To date, We've made significant progress in the outstanding recommendations. 98% is complete, which Captain Cortella will cover for us. And as a report, and as reported in September to this committee and the community, Ms. Jill Itson has been hired to fill the Procedural Justice Director's vacancy. And with that said, I will turn it over to Captain Cortella for an update, allow brief remarks by Ms. Itson, and take some questions after the fact if there are any. All right.
So before I turn it over to Captain Cortella, you mentioned 98% completion. Out of the 9, what does that equate to?
And Captain Cortella will cover that in his presentation, Councilman.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. The only outstanding one that we have is the third-party assessment, but like I said, he'll cover what was still outstanding.
Okay. Captain, you're on deck.
Thank you, sir. So out of all the recommendations, we have 37 recommendations that have reached a status of full compliance with an annual review. And what that means is that we have satisfied the recommendation. However, these topics are so important that we need to make sure that we review them annually. Some examples of these might be the constitutional issues and motor vehicle stops policy, our response to resistance policy, or even the Office of Internal Affairs policy. Additionally, 33 recommendations have reached a status of full compliance. And by that terminology, we mean that we've reached the recommendation and there is nothing further for us to do with that recommendation. An example of that would be adding the sanctity of life statement within applicable policies. And that could either have been the response to resistance policy or the lethal and less lethal weapons policy. Another example would be adding clarity in our internal affairs policy as how do we track citizen complaints. And we developed a supervisory complaint intake process, which has been formalized. And once again, there's no further action on that. The last remaining item we have, which is the last 2% that DC Walker was referring to, is there's one recommendation that's in progress, and that's referring to the third-party review. I'm happy to report that we have identified a state university that we are in communication with and hoping to finalize a contract with it for this review. We are very optimistic, cautiously though, to hopefully have it presented on the next city council meeting. So we made great strides in that. And just some further information, over the course of the last year and a half, we released 3 different press releases in reference to the audit to help communicate with the public about the progress. We've also presented routinely to CPAC our updates throughout the course of the last year. And last year has been a good year in terms that the dashboard has been established. But in addition to the dashboard, we made some tweaks here and there. We've added some hyperlinks to help the public see what documents we want to be talking about. We also added a new feature on there that shows when it was updated last. And hopefully that'll help anyone else that visits the dashboard site able to go and see when the last update on the dashboard has been. And now I'm going to kick it over to Ms. Jill Itson.
Before we do that, are there any questions before we get to Ms. Edson? Any committee members? Okay. Thank you, Captain.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. It's an honor to meet you all electronically. My name is Captain Cortella, mentioned as Jill Itson. I'm actually a researcher in background. I moved here from Philadelphia after being there for 17 years, working in the criminal justice system in the courts area and getting my doctorate in criminal justice. So
your team lost last night.
I know it's heartbreaking, but they had a really great season. And I hope they will come back next year with, in force. But I'm still thrilled to be in Charleston. I'm actually originally from the South Carolina area. I grew up in Beaufort. So Charleston's always been near and dear to my heart. Excited to be here, excited to work in practice on, using data and metrics to try to improve policy. So what I've been doing since my onboarding in late September of 2022 is because policing is new to me, I'm looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. I've really been trying to learn about the agency and connect with stakeholders within and outside of the department. I've also really been trying to learn the policy and provide feedback on the policy where I can. And the CPD has been very great affording me that opportunity. I've also been the liaison with CPAC. I've been kind of taking over responsibility for the main communications and facilitation of that council. And I'm looking forward to being one of the main facilitators of the external audit evaluation when that happens. I'll be working with the researchers coming in based on my background to help them get what they need and make sense of the data and really help us try to incorporate a lot of the suggestions that they will give us into ongoing monitoring and practice. So really excited to be here and hope that, you know, I will be continually working with you all.
All right. Any questions for Jill? Okay. So one of the three of y'all, where do we go from here? What's our next step? And you mentioned, Captain, that there were, I was trying to take notes as fast as you were talking, but there
Sorry
were,
about
you talked about 32 of the items have been fully compliant, but there were 5 that you categorized as needing annual review. And the last one has not been in full compliance yet. It's still the third party review process. Is that an accurate summary?
So let me go in depth just a little bit more. So out of the 37 recommendations that we've had, they've reached a status of full compliance with an annual review. And that means that we've satisfied the recommendations from the audit, but they are that important that we need to touch them every year. And those are policies or different procedures that we're doing. And I gave an example of the 3 policies, but there's actually 37 recommendations.
Okay.
So they've been satisfied, and then we review them every year. And then we have our 33 recommendations that we've satisfied, and there's nothing else simply for us to do with them. And that would have been added the sanctity of life statement, adding the supervised complaint intake, or not grouping certain offenses together in internal affairs processes. So 33 of those, there's nothing else we can do. We've satisfied that part of the audit. And the only one left that we have working on is for the third party review to come in. And as I stated, hopefully we'll have a proposed contract for the next city council meeting.
And Councilman, if I may add, that's the biggest piece of it. That's something that, we definitely had to research and find a third objective body with the research background within the restraints as far as finance, getting it across the finish line. And that's where we are now. So hopefully, like Tony said, that'll be pretty much done. It's not really a check box with this assessment. It's really continuing best practices for this agency. And that's what we committed to. And hopefully this third party assessor will come in and tell us, where we come from and where we still need to go as an agency. So just to add that value.
Mr. Mayor, I see your hand up. I just want to ask one more follow-up question before I call on you. Is the third party review process designed to review all the recommendations, or are they designed to just review those ones that you classified that need or deserving of an annual review?
No, sir. It's everything that we've done and since 2019. It's everything that was recommended and where we are up to this point and where we still need to go. So.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor? Yes, sir.
So I was just wondering if Captain would give us a couple more examples of those things that, so to speak, we've completed, but they're continuing on the annual review. And I presume in all of those 37 categories, so to speak, that we've set up some kind of metric or some kind of measurement to gauge our progress. And that's what Jill was referring to, that she'll be digging into. But a couple more examples of that, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. So some more examples would be, for example, our training division. It was proposed that we have a training plan a year ahead of time, and that's something that we've actually formalized. So we've always had training here within the Charleston Police Department. However, we made it more formalized. We have a training plan that we present to our deputy chiefs and to the chief. And obviously, it's not in stone because as different topics come up, new case law, current events, or best practices, that might need for additional training. Some community recommendations that we've had to address is having a community policing initiative plan. The same with the training plan. While we have a plan for all of our community events, is writing it out formally. How does it affect the community and how does it build partnerships within the community and also the police department? Some other ones for personnel practices dealt with the promotion process, and we've revamped some of the way that we've administered our promotional tools, and also revamped the way that we've actually scored our promotions. And that would be the different ranges of assessing from a 1 to a 10. So it's really getting down in the weeds, but it's truly affected everything from our promotional testing to hiring capabilities to what we're doing out in the field almost every day.
Well, that sounds good. If I may follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
My memory serves me correct. One of the key areas that we focused on, and really what led to the racial bias audit in the first place, was that whole matter of traffic stops. I didn't attend the meeting, but I saw the recording already of that webinar that y'all did last week about traffic stops. And admittedly, if I remember correct, it took us a while to get to where we were, accurately or doing a better job with tracking some of the numbers and some of the data. So, and maybe this is just one example. What are the areas, you say we're continuing annual review. What would you say are the top 3 areas that still need the most attention and work, so to speak, that we're engaged with, of those 37?
So from my perspective, I would say the top 2 is going to be our policies as we review those. So we have 92 policies at the police department, and probably about a third of those get reviewed on an annual basis. And that's just to ensure that we're up to date with case law, best practices, and what's ever going on in society. And all the flip side of that would be our data sets. We weren't extremely data driven prior to this because we didn't have the capabilities to be data driven. Now that we've worked with the state on our citations, they had to have a special checkbox added, and it was just for the Charleston Police Department. So it's a state citation, but just for us, they created this checkbox, and that's helping feed this data so we could link officers to see who we're stopping, where we're stopping, race, gender, the reason for the stop. So it's all coming together. So rather than the 3 areas, it'd be just policies and pretty much our data sets that we're going to focus on for the next year. And I don't want to say that one policy is more important than another, because that's really not the case. So it'd be pretty much, like I said, just the policies and the data sets.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, if I could add to that, we have looked at this audit as a continuum. If we're a healthy organization, we're always doing a self-assessment. So even though we have completed the majority of these, we've all said to ourselves, we're never done. There's always room for improvement. There's always new tools, new techniques, new technologies, new training. And as you asked that question, I wrote down to myself, use of force as an example, the duty to intervene. We have a program that I think you might be somewhat familiar with from Georgetown Law School and some other groups that's called ABLE, Active Bystandership in Law Enforcement. Scenario-based training where we actually have our officers go through scenarios, and they go through them with people that they work with and with our training cadre, and they actually talk about what they would do, how they would intervene. If they're faced with an officer who's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, what are the steps they would take, who they notify, and they actually have to play that out and go through the scenarios. And that's just one example of how training has modified, new programs occur. Things like pursuits, traffic stops, Tony already hit on, but our audit hit on having a recruiting, a hiring, retention plan and a program. Well, we have one. It's getting notoriety around the country as being a best practice. In fact, they're asking for our people to go teach other departments how to do a lot of these things from the city of Charleston. But that doesn't mean we can't do it better. That doesn't mean that we're not constantly trying to improve. Even though we have a national model. I just saw Terry Cherry in the hallway, and she's constantly thinking of new ideas. And so we're constantly wanting to reassess our audit, look at our training, our policies, how we do things, why we do things. Is it translating into the field? Is it operationalized? What are the supervisors' roles in these areas? And of course, race and equity and bias is central to a lot of the data points that we're continuing to kind of collect. We've come a long ways, but we know we have more to do.
Thank you, Chief. I'm gonna call on Councilmember Mitchell first to see if he has any specific questions or inquiries.
Not at the moment. I'm good.
Okay, Councilmember Shealy.
I don't have anything right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brady.
No, I'm good.
Mr. Harris, you know, I've talked briefly over the weekend, and thank you for joining in. Is there any comments that you wish to make at this time regarding the audit?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm actually here at the request of the chair of the CPAC, Paul Tamburino. As you know, the CPAC has each of the council members and the mayor have representatives appointed to CPAC.
You break it up on us.
We think, and we've been charged after the audit has been put in place. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Well, you're breaking up every now and then. It's kind of sketchy.
Well, the long and the short of it is, Paul, the chairman, would request that particularly each of the members of this subcommittee, of this standing committee, be in communication on a regular basis with their appointee to facilitate the members of the committee and the council as a whole being aware of what CPAC is doing. We're in an advisory relationship with the department. We work closely, particularly with Captain Cortella around the policies. We are a volunteer group. We're pleased to have Jillian now on board to provide some support for us. Some of the recommendations I would suggest, Captain Cortella, if the recommendations regarding citizens' involvement around questions of policy changes and directives and training have been in the area of compliance. It's in compliance with need for continued review, and we would like to have all of the seats filled on CPAC by appointments by the city council members, so we have enough bodies to get this work done. I appreciate listening, and we look forward to making a presentation. The chair will request at some future time a presentation generally about CPAC's operation and what we can do to be of assistance to the committee and the department. Thank you for this opportunity.
So what vacancies do we have on that commission? How many vacancies are there?
I believe there are a total of 7 vacancies, and they, I believe, 3 or 4, it's maybe 6 vacancies, with at least 3 of them being vacancies by non-appointments from city council members. We can provide you that information of which the vacancies are. I think Jillian has that list, and we can provide council members. And we would ask if you need assistance in identifying individuals. Our suggestion, for example, is that those folks who have gone through the Citizens Police Academy training be the pool from which we draw those folks, because they will come with an understanding, more of an understanding of what is going on in the department. We as CPAC may be able to provide them a little bit more context so in terms of some of the challenges the community sees with implementation, but they would be coming informed, and that would be very helpful, I think, both to the department as well as CPAC.
Thank you. That's very helpful to have, and we'll circle back with you either somebody from the police department or myself will circle back with you on those suggestions. And appreciate your time on doing that. You've been very much engaged in this process, Mr. Harris, and it's really quite important. Somebody of your caliber to volunteer your time and energy on this and your expertise. Thank you so much.
It's important. Thank you.
So let me ask this question. We've done this audit, and we've been in compliance with a majority of it. At the end of the day, what is it telling us? What is this audit telling us? Are we better at policing than we were 5 years ago? Are we more in tune with citizens' concerns? Are we doing some things better than we weren't doing 5, 6, 10 years ago?
So
That sounds like the $1 million question. I mean, we did an audit to look at certain particulars. We're in compliance with 98% of what's been recommended. But at the end of the day, what is the interpretation? What does that mean? Are we an overall better department than we were before? Or
So what the audit has afforded us to do, I would say in two things that I told the mayor is look at our policies. Even though we're CLIA certified, it's really, and also in conjunction with CPAC, it helped us form the relationship with CPAC, but also really looking at our policies and make sure they're up to date. But also on the data side, I would say if we didn't have the audit, we wouldn't be where we are in terms of the aggressiveness that we had to pursue these changes with the data, especially when COVID hit. When COVID hit, the world pretty much shut down, but we were still going full steam ahead on just trying to get this data extrapolated from the many systems that don't talk to one another. I'm sure all the IT people are dying right now because I'm using the correct words, but these data systems are able to talk to one another now. They could pull the data, and that's linking us to where our violent crime is at, where we need to be policing at. Once again, we had ideas of that. It probably wasn't crystal clear, but now we're better data driven. And then also with this change to our new policy, it's going to be the change that we have traffic or motor vehicle stops, and that's going to also change our data as well. So it does have an important impact on the community. Not that we're treating the community in a negative way, we just have the data to support it now.
And it's all about assessment. It's very important that we do self-assessments periodically throughout, as we move forward. We're no different than any other profession. If we don't look at ourselves and see if we're incorporating best practices, we have a tendency to kind of fall off the wayside. So I think it's really good, like Tony said, but it's all about best practices, and the audit allowed us to do that and making sure we are incorporating best practices.
Yeah, and if I may just briefly add to that, I think that question that you asked, that important question, we're going to get some more insight into how well we're doing when this third-party evaluator comes in and puts an objective eye on what's been accomplished. Because I can tell you from somebody that wasn't involved but is seeing all the work that was done, there was a tremendous amount of work accomplished. And now we need someone to come in and tell us, after speaking with multiple parties involved in the audit, both internally and externally, what do they think was the value? What do they see needing improvement? And how do we best use all the data that we've collected to be able to, as was said earlier, operationalize our change and measure it going forward?
I think that really is $1 million question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would also just add on top of everything that's been said. Again, it's a continuum. It's about a relationship with our community. People like Jerry and Paul Tamburino and Doris and all the people that were on the call last week, the people that are on our advisory council, being engaged and listening to their community members, like Jerry just said, having different districts in the city represented, the more engaged, the better. So that part of this is a process of engagement, of discussion, of a collaboration. We talk about building trust. You can't really do that unless you actually have a conversation. So it's not just the police department saying, hey, we're doing this. It's a collaborative effort. And it's an ongoing conversation that involves a lot of different people. And the more that we open that up, the more that we're better for it. And it's not going to stop. If we do it right, this is going to continue.
Thank you, Chief, for that comment. I'll follow back up on that later. But it may be helpful. Who's going to show up tomorrow at the city council meeting to make this presentation at public safety?
Probably Tony. He doesn't know it yet, but probably we can talk about it.
And Captain, if you want to send me something via email, I can probably help carry a lot of that load. I was trying to take notes as you were talking, but that was a lot of information that we just parse out. So if you want to send me a bullet point, I'll be glad to carry that for you. But I think
I'll be happy to speak on behalf, just so we make sure to get the right terminology and all of our accomplishments notated.
Okay, good deal. All right. There's nothing to vote on this. This is a discussion only as an update on this. And I appreciate everybody's input and hard work. This is not something we obviously take lightly. It is something that's been, like they said, ongoing for several years. So thank you all for the work that y'all have done on this. Jill, welcome to the team, and we'll be working with you, I'm sure, as time goes by. All right, the next item on our agenda is item number 5, approval to submit an application for the fiscal year 23. And I believe, Steve, are you going to carry this one? Steve Rumlin?
I'm here. I can cover it.
I usually call on you to do it, so I just assume so.
Is this the, I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda right here in front of me.
Yeah, this is the application to submit an application for the School Resource Officer Grant Program to carry for our SROs.
Right. This would provide, right now we have funding for 2 officers. This would provide funding for an additional officer in our teams at an additional school. And I forget the name of the school that we're covering.
That would be for Charleston Math and Science Council member.
Thank you. All right.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
How much is the grant for? Does anybody know?
Yes, sir. It's a little over $250,000 that we would receive revenues for. All 3 salaries and fringe for the officers.
Very good. I think we have a motion and a second. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on item number 5? Okay. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 6, I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention that Councilmember Shealy, myself, the mayor, of course, and Councilmember Rappel attended this Salute to the Blue banquet on January 28th. It was a wonderful evening. We've had some star-studded participants attend the meeting. I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Ben Navarro and his group. The folks at Charleston Place put on quite a spread for those in attendance. The awards given out were well received, well recognized. Really just very engaging process, and important to hear some of the accomplishments that some of our officers made throughout the year. This was sponsored by the Lens Project. And that's really my intent, was just to bring this to everyone's attention of how important this was, and the support the community was handing out to the police department and all of the men and women within that department. I sat next to a couple of recipients, 2 recipients who from the animal control department, but very young and very engaging young women who were well deserving of their recognition. And it was just a delightful evening. So, Chief, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, or the mayor. It was just, I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the generosity of Charleston Place and the organizers, and the well-received event that we had that evening.
Mayor, you want to go first?
There.
Oh, it was terrific.
That is a perfect summary. It was terrific. And
well, it was. And you know, I told Chief when we were standing up on the stage to give out an award or 2 that to me it felt like a dream come true. that we were able in such fine first-class fashion to honor and thank those men and women who are serving in this police department and have been doing a great job. And some of the stories that were told that went along with those awards were just amazing, life-saving in some cases, truly acting as guardians for our community and a focus on community policing as well. So all the kind of positive things we want to instill and reward and recognize in our department, and to do it in such a again, such a first-class fashion. It was a dream come true. It was really great. And Mr. Navarro, he wasn't there personally, but he had a video presentation, and what generosity they displayed. In a way, it really helps our Lens Foundation so much, because having the awards banquet is something that Lens Foundation wanted to do, and of course willing to pay for, and to have someone stand up and just say, hey, I'll take care of the dinner for you. That means that's that much more community policing efforts that we can help fund through the Lens Foundation. So there's nothing not to like about this event, and again, thankful for Ben's generosity as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Shealy, I know you were there. You were at the table next to us, and
yeah, it was an incredible event. I mean, we can't do enough to, thank our law enforcement officers for what they do, but I don't think it could have been any more first class and top notch, than it was. It was absolutely fantastic, and it's good for people like Peter and myself and others to be able to sit at a table in that kind of atmosphere as well, and hear the stories, and like the mayor was saying, the heroism that came out in the stories. I mean, it's incredible, some of the things that our law enforcement officers do, and like I said, we can't thank them enough. And but I think that was a good first class way of at least making an attempt at it. So thank you.
thank you, sir. Chief, anything else you want to add?
You all covered it very well. Just a lot of people behind the scenes that put a lot of work into it. And when you look at how tough it's been in policing over the last few years, and just the idea of hiring and recruiting and retention and best practices, it's the same thing as what we said about the audit. We're trying to really hit it from many different angles, get creative, use the finite resources we have to look out for our residents, our city, and to look out for our troops in some cases. And this is an example of that, and a lot of good things that are going on. And again, some of this came out of the audit. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all. I just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention, and we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. The next item for discussion is regarding the Memphis Police Department and Tyree Nichols. I didn't want a public safety committee meeting to pass without some discussion, obviously, of what happened with Mr. Nichols, the arrest of several Memphis police officers. And I'm sure we've seen the videos. If you haven't, I would certainly encourage you to do that, not of any pleasure, but just to show the shocking impact of what happened to Mr. Nichols and his death several days after he was assaulted. Just a totally senseless crime committed against him. The impact, obviously, on the community, impact on his family. The police department and the authorities seem to act quickly on the suspension, investigation, and eventual arrests. And I'm sure we get updates from time to time that the ongoing inquiry and the other people who were involved. It just sickens you as to what happened. I appreciate, I've received some comments, and I've reached out to certain folks in the community. Mr. Harris sent us some information that he and I need to get together on. I haven't forgotten doing that, Jerome. let's continue that discussion. But I did want to bring it to everyone's attention again, and if there's any other discussion about that. And also, when I did meet with Chief Reynolds and had discussions with him, we met in the mayor's office in preparation for any response that may have occurred from the arrest and the release of the video that Friday night and through that weekend. I think the reports I saw, 20 folks gathered at Marion Square over the weekend. But we were prepared in the event of unpermitted gatherings or anything that may have come out of that. So I just wanted to make that presentation to the committee, and certainly will open up. And I know that the Chief Reynolds was interviewed several times. And Chief, you may just want to share a little bit about your comments regarding that and the police response to this very tragic event.
Sure, I followed this even before it hit the news. I had heard about it from colleagues around the country. And even before the video was released, I made a statement because I'd heard enough to offer my own condemnation as a chief and as a professional. I've never seen anything like that in almost 35 years. They beat and murdered Tyree Nichols. And I made statements to the media before the video was released, and following the release of the video, I made a statement to our officers and men and women within our own police department. And I'm going to read a very brief letter that I co-authored with the president of an organization, FBI National Executive Institute Associates. I said the National FBI Executive Institute Associates and its membership categorically condemn as shameful and unacceptable the beating of Mr. Tyree Nichols by 5 members of the Memphis Police Department on 7 January 2023. And we know there's more than 5 that were involved in this now. We view this conduct not as an expression of law enforcement, but as a criminal act that resulted in the death of Mr. Nichols. We see no excuse or rationalization for this conduct. The behavior of these officers violates everything that is good and decent, which law enforcement in America stands for and must represent. Law enforcement leaders in every state, county, and municipality must lead their agencies with strong ethical principles applying to all their employees. And this went throughout the country to agencies across the country. Violation of these core principles should not be tolerated by agency leadership, ranking officers, line officers, or non-sworn personnel. Agency procedures and practices in recruitment, selection, training, promotion, supervision, discipline, and accountability must be guided by principles such as integrity and responsibility, respect for the rights and dignity of all individuals, and concern for the safety and the physical well-being of those they contact and those they take into custody. Law enforcement agencies throughout the nation should look to strengthening the ethics of organizational culture as a means of ensuring effective performance and increasing public trust. And I'll just add that the audit speaks to the core of this. We can never have people that we hire, that we train, that we develop, that we put in supervisor and command positions that would ever tolerate anything that would even resemble this type of behavior. I believe in our profession. I think it's a noble profession. I think the cops are needed more today than they've ever been needed in the history of our profession. But we have to treat people with dignity and respect. We have to be professional in what we do. We have to spend time hiring the right people. I'm already hearing that they really reduced a lot of their standards to try to meet the demands of their staffing challenges. And when you reduce your standards, when you don't do backgrounds, when you don't do psychologicals, you don't do all the things that we do, it leads to bad outcomes, no matter what it is. It's something that we can't allow to happen in our department. And so we take great pains in who we hire. And I tell our recruiters, as much as we're hiring right now, I'd rather go 100 officers short than hire one officer who doesn't belong in this badge, in this profession, in this uniform, in this department, in this city. I'm very passionate about that. And so I would rather just not hire somebody. We're in a day and age today where I'll fire somebody on a Friday and there's other agencies that'll hire those people away from us. We never do that in the city of Charleston, I promise you. I would rather go short than have people that don't have integrity, that don't have professionalism, that don't have the highest standards of ethic for their peers, themselves, and our residents. And I'll stop there, but you can tell I'm pretty passionate about it. It was disgusting what we saw in that video. It's even almost equally or maybe more disgusting of what I'm hearing, because that was not the first time that happened. I'm sure there's many people that were mistreated, and I'm sure there's a lot more that's going to come out about this, even than what we saw in that video.
Thank you, Chief. And if you haven't shared that letter, I would certainly encourage you to share that letter with my colleagues on City Council.
I
think
will.
it's well stated. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Councilwoman Mitchell.
The only thing I want to say on that, it was deplorable what happened. And I always state that if officers have training, they needed to have those training and produce those training within the community. Some officers, to me, get the training and forget all about it, the training that they have. So I don't know. It was deplorable. I don't know how to even talk about it. It was disgusting when I saw the tape. And when I heard about it, when some people was calling me from that area, was telling me about it. And I said, I know all of them should have the training, but they didn't utilize the training that they received. And that's my thing on it. I mean, that's for all officers, wherever they may be. When you have those training and you come into a community, you're supposed to use those training to the best ability of the citizen wherever you're living, wherever you're policing. But some people forget about the training that they have and do other things. And that's when you have to weed those individuals out when that happens. And that's what I believe. I believe if they're not doing what they should do, then you get rid of them. That's just me. That's just the way I feel about it. Because you're working for the community, you would protect and to serve, not to be a bully, not to take it, take things as you are some kind of big, powerful person because you have the badge and gun. And that's not what it's all about, you see. And that's what I see some of those officers there did. Figure that they had the badge and the gun, and then the people in the community is no one. You can't live that way. You can't do that way. And that put a bad mark on other police departments and other policemen. The people look at all the policemen the same way and see that make it bad for the rest of them. So these are the things that I look at, and it hurt me a lot to see what happened to that young man. Because it could have been my son, could have been your son, anyone. What happened to them, and it was deplorable. And I applauded the family what they were saying, that don't go out and cause problems in the community. They were saying that they were adamant about that. They didn't want any things to happen in the community because of this happened. And that took a lot of gumption to do that. I don't know if I would think that way sometimes, So that's really all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Mitchell. As always, your insight is so critical to the work we do here, and appreciate your comments. Mr. Mayor.
If I could add to that, Mr. Chair, I just, Councilmember Mitchell said it way better than I could have, but you said so much there. We have to have empathy for the people that we serve, and to have an audit and say we've done 98% of our of it's done, and this is what we're talking about earlier that we're never done, is we can have policy, we can have training, we can have hiring, just like Councilmember Mitchell just said. But somehow if people get out of the academy and they have a culture, that's culture, right? And culture eats policy every day of the week, right? It always trumps policy. So what is the culture that we have within our organization? I'd like to think that it's a very high level of professionalism, but any agency our size, we have to constantly pay attention. We have to make sure people have access to us to complain when there's an issue. Maybe it's courtesy, whatever it is. So those are the things that we can't just say, hey, we checked the box, we did the audit, we're good to go, we can move on. It's the opposite. We're leaning into this, we're embracing it, and we want it to make us better. It already has, but we think we can be even better than what we are now.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor or Councilmember Shealy, Councilmember Brady, y'all want to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most has been said. I reiterate both Councilmember Mitchell and Chief Reynolds' remarks. Incident in Memphis was tragic and despicable. And but this whole matter of improving ourselves, as Chief Reynolds points out, it's a journey. It's not a destination, and that's why Captain Cortella notes that 37 of those items that were identified in our own audit a few years ago are not one and done kind of things. They're things that we continually want to monitor and measure. That's how we get better. That's how we continually improve ourselves. And then with all the training and preparation in the world, to still be on guard for the integrity part of policing that Chief Reynolds so well describes and mentions. It's got to be both sides of that equation for us to be successful and protect our citizens long term. So I just want to thank our leadership team and welcome Jill also to the team here, because y'all are doing that. Y'all are setting a culture here for the future safety of the city and our citizens. And I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. We're always improving ourselves, but setting that culture is just so important. I mean, I think it's making a difference already. I think it has made a difference, and we're going to keep it up. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other committee member comment? Thank you all for those words. It's watching the video, and you can't help but make the comparison what happened to Jamal Sutherland. And you question the lack of humanity in this. People who are in charge of others or who are responsible for our public safety show such disregard for basic human dignity. It's just appalling to see that, and you just wonder how that got into the people's minds and actions and system in doing that. And Councilmember Mitchell brought this up, and the chief brought it up. But the other part of training is supervision, making sure that those superior officers are watching what the officers below them under their charge are doing, and making sure they're doing their job right. And always one of the questions in my mind about that were whether or not there were complaints made against this Scorpion unit or complaints made against these individual officers that went unanswered, or there was whitewash, just sort of thrown underneath the rug. I mean, that's how these things sort of fester, unfortunately, in that regard. They're not being attended to. So I appreciate the discussion. I think it's something we've got to remain on our guard with to make sure that we're supporting the police department as best we can, but we're supporting our community, and that it just sort of shakes us to the core to watch something along those lines happen. Mr. Harris, you've been sitting here listening very patiently to all of us, and you did reach out to me a while ago, though I haven't followed back up with you on that discussion. And did you want to make any comments on any other? Well, have you available?
No, not at this time, Mr. Chairman. The discussion is one. The question is, how do we make everyone feel safe? It's not about law enforcement. It's about having an environment where everyone feels safe and has an obligation to be part of building a safe community. Addressing head forward some difficult conversations, supporting of community policing, and supporting police and developing a culture of public safety that is jointly used and understood by both the community and the police, and where we need to be going. It's difficult in some environments. It's difficult in this polarized political environment where folks are weaponizing terms, but that's the work that we've chosen to do. I appreciate the opportunity to listen in and participate. And again, I ask you, council members, for you and your colleagues to hold folks accountable for participating in groups like advisory committees like CPAC. That's the only, by having involvement is the only way that you're going to get assistance. You've got tough jobs. You need help, and these groups represent that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right. Well, a very good discussion all the way around. A good meeting. We appreciate the participation from everybody. And Captain Catella, I'll see you tomorrow for sure at our council meeting. Unless there's any other business that needs to be brought before this committee, we'll end on Mr. Harris's notes. And thank you for those who are participating. We are hereby adjourned. Thank you.